Okay, good afternoon again. I have the right paper. Okay. All right, so we are continuing then with Esther. So who had a chance to read it over lunch? Right. Okay, oh good, great. Okay, so as you remember then, we left off in this story and there was this threat to the Jews that they were going to be annihilated by Haman's evil plot. And Mordecai had called on Esther, the queen, and his niece and adopted daughter to use her position as the queen to save the Jews from this evil plot. You know, Esther was really positioned in a very global world. You saw the map earlier, and the Persian Empire was big. I mean, she lived in a multicultural world. She is a foreigner in a foreign land. She just doesn't probably happen to speak with an accent there, because she had lived there her whole life. But when she faces this choice of whether to help or not to help, it's also a very localized and individual and personal choice with big global consequences. As I mentioned before, this is one of the 2 books in the Bible that never mentions the word God. This puzzles scholars, and there's debates about this. There's books that are written about this. There's also no emphasis in this book on Jewish practices. Very briefly, there's a little mention of fasting, but basically there's no mention of Jewish dietary law, of Jewish prayer, of distinctive Jewish dress. That's very unusual for books that take place outside of the Jewish homeland. Usually these books put a lot of emphasis on particular Jewish practices. So we have that in addition to God not being mentioned. So it makes Esther a very special and unique book in this way, which shouldn't surprise us. It's one of the only 2 books named after a woman in the Bible. Of course, it will be distinctive. Probably the closest thing mentioned is when Mordecai tells Esther maybe she has risen to the position as a queen for such a time as this, indicates that maybe there's something divine at work, a bigger plan, and that she is in her position specifically for this, even though it doesn't really mention the word God. But this troubled later Jews. And when they read the book, it troubled them that the word God wasn't mentioned. And when they translated the Bible from Hebrew to Greek, which became the kind of national language of the world, international language of the world several centuries later, they added in some prayers that did mention the word God. So this would satisfy the religious community. So then they could use the book in religious synagogues and in religious settings. But we might see the lack of the mention of the word God in another way. Throughout this story, Esther has to hide who she is. And her fate depends on it when she becomes queen, on hiding her identity. So perhaps God is also lurking just beneath the pages of the story, waiting for us to gently turn the pages and find where God might be. So when we left off, Esther was poised to either reject Mordecai's challenge to help the Jews or to turn away and to maybe save herself. Of course, as we know, she's the heroine, so what do you think she's going to do?
The right thing.
She's going to say yes, right? So she says, yes, she will help her people. But she goes about it very carefully, which is probably wise, because let's remember what we know about her husband. You tell me.
Not very bright.
Yeah, not very bright and kind of impulsive and kind of an angry person from time to time, right? So she doesn't just go into this blindfolded. She bides her time, and she enters the courtroom, and the king does allow her to live. She requests that the king and the Haman both attend a banquet. And of course, what did we learn about banquets earlier? Something important is going to happen. So this is our ding, 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 ding. So we know something significant will happen. This is also a book that is the basis of the Jewish celebration of Purim. And all my Jewish friends tell me that Purim is like Christmas for Christians. So, you know, we dress up little kids in bathrobes and ooh and ah over them, right, at Christmas pageants. The same thing happens at Purim. All the little kids dress up, and the adults, they have a little pageant and everything. But my understanding is the adults go in the back and drink a lot of wine. And they read the entire book of Esther as the kids are acting it out. And every time the names Esther and Mordecai come up, people cheer and they yell and they shake bells and rattle keys. And every time the name Haman comes up, people boo and they hiss. So are you up for it? Yeah. Right. Okay, so we'll make this very festive. So this is what happens at the banquet, and Michelle is going to read it for us.
So the king and Haman went into feast with Queen Esther.
Yay!
On the second day, as they were drinking wine, the king again said to Esther, "What is your Esther.
Yay!
It shall be granted you, and what is your request? Even to the half of my kingdom it shall be fulfilled. Then Queen Esther answered, if I have won your favor, O king, and if it pleases the king,
No, kings.
let my life be given me, that is my petition, and the lives of my people, that is my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have held my peace, but no enemy can compensate for this damage to the king.
I'm not sure it's good to boo the king. He has the power to grant a request. But we'll do it again tomorrow. You can feel free to boo Mordecai. Okay. All right, so Queen Esther dramatically at this banquet then makes her request, she makes her plea, and she even maybe over-embellishes a little bit. If you had only sold us as slaves, I would have been quiet. But the spread is even bigger than that. So Esther does reveal her identity, and she reveals the plot against the Jews. The king becomes enraged, as we know he's likely to do, but this time he directs his anger towards Haman, towards the guy that's making the evil plans. And ironically, Haman is put to death very quickly on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai, because when he was plotting against Mordecai. So the book has, yes, but you can boo, it's good. So the book has all these kind of twists and turns in it, and fateful endings. So in one clever action, Esther reveals her own identity and manages to reveal the plot that Haman hatched against the Jewish people. At the beginning of this story, the cards were really stacked against Esther. She's an orphan. She's never seen her homeland, her ancestral homeland. She's objectified in this beauty pageant. She's sexually victimized. She's taken to the king, and he sleeps with her before he decides that he likes her enough to make her queen. She has to hide her identity, and she lives in this patriarchal kingdom with an impulsive husband who has anger management issues. Yet, we see that she rises to this challenge. And I think she's supported by unseen hands, and I can only imagine that they're the hands of God underneath her. So, the conclusion in the morning.